The stars looked different from the bridge of the eternal glory. Admiral Zethkar pressed his 4 hands against the viewing window and stared into the darkness ahead. His blue scales rippled with nervous energy as he watched the swirling colors of deep space. "Sir, we are approaching the final sector," announced his communications officer. The young Vorthan's voice carried excitement mixed with fear. They had traveled for 3 months to reach this place. The place where all their star maps ended. Zethkar turned away from the window. Behind him, the bridge buzzed with activity. Officers from different species worked at their stations. The Krex warriors stood tall and proud, their red armor gleaming under the ship's lights. The ethereal beings floated near their special chambers, their ghostly forms shifting like mist. The ancient keepers sat in meditation, their wise eyes closed. "This is it," Zethkar said to his crew. "We are about to make history. For thousands of years, our people have wondered what lies beyond the edge of known space. Today we find out." The fleet around them was impressive. 27 ships from the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy, each one packed with the best technology they could build. Their mission was simple: explore the empty sectors at the galaxy's edge and complete the great atlas that had taken centuries to create. "Energy readings ahead, sir," called out the sensor officer. Her tentacles moved quickly over her controls. "Something is not right. The readings make no sense." Zethkar walked to her station. The screen showed impossible numbers. Energy signatures that their best scientists said could not exist. Structures that seemed to bend space itself. Could it be a natural phenomenon? Asked Commander Tixall, the Krex military leader aboard the ship. His voice was deep and threatening, as all Krex voices were. "No, sir," the sensor officer replied. "These readings suggest artificial construction. Very advanced construction." One of the ethereal beings drifted closer. Its voice echoed in their minds without using sound. "We sense something strange ahead. Minds that we cannot read. Thoughts that exist beyond our reach." The oldest keeper opened his ancient eyes. "In all our millions of years, we have never encountered anything like this. The readings remind us of legends, stories we thought were myths." Zethkar felt his heart racing. This was what they had come to find. The unknown. The final frontier. "All ships prepare for close approach. Launch scout vessels. We proceed with standard first contact protocols." The next few hours changed everything they thought they knew about the galaxy. The scout ships moved ahead of the main fleet, small, fast vessels designed for exploration. They carried the best sensors and communication equipment the Confederation could build. Their crews were volunteers, brave souls ready to face the unknown. "Scout 1 reporting," came the voice over the communication system. "We are seeing structures ahead. Massive structures. They appear to be ships, but they are larger than our biggest space stations." "Scout 2 here," another voice added. "Confirmed. We count at least 50 vessels. Their design is unlike anything in our databases. They appear to be made of materials we cannot identify." Zethkar exchanged glances with his officers. 50 massive ships was a significant military force. If these beings were hostile, the situation could become dangerous quickly. "Maintain distance," he ordered. "Do not approach closer than 10,000 kilometers. Begin standard greeting protocols." The fleet's best linguists began broadcasting messages in over 300 languages, mathematical sequences, pictures showing peaceful intent, music from different cultures. Everything they had learned about first contact over centuries of exploration. For several minutes, there was no response. Then something appeared on their screens that made everyone freeze. A single small ship had appeared from nowhere. It was tiny compared to their massive vessels, no larger than a fighter craft. But as they watched, their most powerful sensors could not get a clear reading on it. "How did it get so close without our sensors detecting it?" whispered the sensor officer. Before anyone could answer, their communication systems came alive with a new voice. The voice spoke in perfect galactic standard, the common language used throughout the Confederation. "Greetings, travelers from the Galactic Confederation. We have been watching your approach. We know who you are and where you come from." The voice was calm, friendly even, but something about it made Zethkar's scales stand on edge. "This is Admiral Zethkar of the Confederation Exploration Fleet," he responded. "We come in peace, seeking knowledge and friendship. May we ask who we are addressing?" "I am Commander Jake Morrison of the Earth Colonial Defense Force. You may call me Jake. And yes, we know you come in peace. We have been monitoring your communications since you entered this sector. Earth. The name meant nothing to any of them. None of their databases contained any reference to a species called humans or a planet called Earth. We would be honored to meet with your people, Zethkar continued. Perhaps we could arrange a formal meeting between our governments. There was a pause. Then Jake's voice returned, and now it carried something that sounded like amusement. Admiral, I need to explain something to you. Your fleet is very impressive. Your ships are beautiful examples of your technology. But right now you are completely surrounded. The bridge went silent. Every officer turned to their sensors. The screens showed nothing except the single small ship. I'm sorry, Zethkar said carefully, but our sensors show only your vessel. That's because we don't want you to see the others yet. But trust me, they're there. 112 ships, to be exact. Each one could disable your entire fleet without breaking a sweat. Commander Tixall stepped forward, his hand moving to his weapon. Are you threatening us? Not at all, Jake replied, his voice still friendly. I'm just making sure you understand the situation. You've reached the edge of your maps. Welcome to where ours begin. Suddenly, the space around them shimmered. Like heat waves rising from hot ground, the emptiness began to twist and bend. Ships appeared everywhere. Massive vessels that made the Confederation fleet look like toys. They had been there all along, invisible to every sensor the galaxy's best minds had created. The human ships were beautiful in a way that hurt to look at. Their hulls seemed to be made of living metal that flowed like water. Lights pulsed along their surfaces in patterns that suggested intelligence. These were not just machines. They were something more. As I said, Jake continued, you're surrounded. But please don't worry. We mean you no harm. In fact, we've been looking forward to this meeting for quite some time. Zethkar's mind raced. How long had these humans been watching them? How had they hidden entire fleets of ships? What kind of technology could make their sensors completely useless? How long have you known about us? He managed to ask. About your specific expedition? Since you left your home systems 3 months ago. About your civilizations in general. Oh, we've been watching you for about 12,000 of your years. 12,000 years. The number hit the bridge like a physical blow. Some of their civilizations were not even that old. One of the ethereal beings tried to reach out with its mind, seeking to touch the thoughts of this Jake Morrison. It recoiled immediately, its form flickering with what looked like pain. I wouldn't try that if I were you, Jake said gently. Human minds aren't like yours. It's a bit like trying to grab hold of a lightning bolt. What do you want from us? Asked Zethkar. It was the only question that mattered now. Nothing, actually. We're quite happy living out here on the rim, but since you finally made it this far, we thought it might be nice to say hello, maybe share a cup of coffee and talk about the galaxy. Coffee, another word they did not recognize. We would be honored to accept your invitation, Zethkar said. He had no choice. These humans, whoever they were, held all the power here. Excellent. But I'm afraid you'll have to come aboard one of our ships. Your vessels aren't really built for what we call deep space. Don't worry, we'll take good care of them while you're gone. Before Zethkar could ask what he meant, the human ships began to move. They flowed through space like living things, surrounding each Confederation vessel in what looked like bubbles of twisted light. The Confederation ships found themselves being gently lifted and carried along. What are you doing to our ships? Commander Tixall demanded. Just keeping them safe, Jake replied. Where we're going, normal matter tends to get a bit unstable. Think of it as a protective shell. Where they were going turned out to be beyond anything they had imagined. The human ship that approached to collect them was not a ship at all in any sense they understood. It was a city. A floating city larger than some moons, filled with lights and structures that seemed to grow and change as they watched. As their shuttle approached the docking bay, Zethkar saw gardens floating in space without any kind of containment. Trees and flowers growing in the vacuum, somehow thriving in conditions that should have killed them instantly. Welcome to the Harmony, Jake's voice came over their shuttle's speakers. She's one of our smaller exploration vessels. I know she looks big, but wait until you see what we call a real ship. The docking bay they entered was vast enough to hold their entire fleet, but it was not empty. Creatures moved about their business everywhere they looked. Not just humans, but beings they had never seen before. Species that looked like they came from worlds with completely different laws of physics. As they stepped out of their shuttle, a figure approached them. It was clearly human, but that was where normal ended. Jake Morrison appeared to be made of living starlight. His form was solid enough, but lights moved beneath his skin like constellations. When he smiled, it was like watching a sunrise. "Gentlemen, ladies, and respected beings," Jake said, extending what appeared to be a normal hand. "Welcome aboard the Harmony. I hope you don't mind the accommodations. We've tried to adjust the local physics to make you more comfortable." Zethkar reached out to shake the offered hand. The moment their skin touched, he felt something impossible. For just an instant, he could sense the vastness of space around them. Not just this solar system, but thousands of them. Millions, all connected by threads of light and thought. "You felt that, didn't you?" Jake asked, noting Zethkar's expression. "Sorry about that. We sometimes forget how overwhelming first contact can be for other species." As they walked through the corridors of the ship, their guides pointed out various features. Gardens that grew in dimensions their eyes could not properly see. Libraries that contained the complete histories of civilizations they had never heard of. Workshops where humans casually assembled devices that made their best technology look like stone tools. They passed a playground where human children were playing, but their games involved creating miniature stars and planets, then watching tiny civilizations develop on them over the course of minutes. "Is that safe?" asked one of the keepers, watching a child who could not have been more than 10 years old manipulating what appeared to be a small black hole. "Oh yes," Jake replied. "Little Sarah there is working on her physics homework. She's trying to create a stable wormhole network. She'll get it eventually." In the medical bay, they saw humans regenerating lost limbs by simply thinking about it. In the engineering sections, repairs were being done by workers who seemed to phase in and out of existence, working in multiple dimensions at once. "I don't understand," Zethkar said finally. "You're people. What are you?" Jake stopped walking and turned to face them. His expression became serious for the first time. "We're human," he said simply. "We come from a small blue world about 20,000 light years from here. We learned to use tools, then fire, then steam, then electricity, then atomic power, then fusion, just like most species do. But this," Zethkar gestured around them, "this is impossible." "No." Jake smiled again. "This is what happens when a species doesn't give up. When they keep learning, keep growing, keep pushing forward no matter what. We never stopped asking what if." They were led to what Jake called the observation deck. It was a vast space with no walls or ceiling that they could see. They seemed to be floating in space itself, surrounded by stars. "This is where we like to think," Jake said. "Out here you can see the whole galaxy. All the civilizations, all the worlds, all the possibilities." As they watched, the stars began to move, or rather their perspective changed. They zoomed out until they could see the entire galaxy spread below them like a glowing spiral. Points of light marked the locations of different civilizations. "See that cluster there?" Jake pointed to a bright region near the galaxy's center. "That's where most of your people live. The Confederation territory. Very nice neighborhood. Good schools, low crime rates, excellent trade routes. And this?" Zethkar pointed to the rim where they now were. The area their maps marked as empty. "This is where the work gets done," Jake said. "Where we prepare for what comes next." Before they could ask what he meant, Jake clapped his hands together. "But enough philosophy for one day. You must be tired from your journey. We've prepared quarters for you. Tomorrow we'll show you around properly, maybe introduce you to some of the other neighbors." "Other neighbors?" asked Commander Tixall. Jake's smile widened. "Oh yes. Humans aren't the only ones living out here on the rim. There are the builders, the gardeners, the shepherds, the dreamers. You'll like them. They're all very friendly." As they were led to their quarters, Zethkar's mind struggled to process what they had seen. His life's work had been creating maps of the galaxy. Complete accurate charts showing every star, every world, every civilization. He had believed he was close to finishing that work. Now he realized he had not even begun. The humans had been watching them for 12,000 years. They possessed technology that made the Confederation look primitive. They lived in ships the size of cities and treated the laws of physics like suggestions. And they were friendly. That might have been the most terrifying thing of all. As he settled into his quarters, a space larger and more luxurious than his own home, Zethkar stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the rest of the galaxy was going about its business, unaware that everything they thought they knew about the universe was wrong. The galactic atlas did not end here at the rim. It transformed into something far greater than they had ever imagined. And tomorrow, he would begin to learn just how much they did not know about the cosmos they called home. Outside his window, The human city ship moved through space like a living dream, carrying them toward revelations that would reshape the galaxy forever. Sleep did not come easily to Admiral Zethkar that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the impossible things he had witnessed. Children playing with miniature galaxies, workers phasing through solid walls, humans whose bodies seemed made of living light. When morning came, he found his delegation gathered in the common area of their quarters. The Krex warriors looked uncomfortable, their hands never far from weapons that seemed suddenly primitive. The ethereal beings flickered more than usual, their forms unstable with confusion. Even the ancient keepers appeared shaken. "Did any of you sleep?" Zethkar asked. "Sleep is for those who understand their place in the universe," muttered Commander Tixall. "I am no longer certain what our place is." A soft chime filled the room, followed by Jake Morrison's familiar voice. "Good morning, everyone. I hope you rested well. Breakfast is ready when you are, and after that we have quite a tour planned for you." They found Jake waiting in a garden that should not have existed. Plants from hundreds of different worlds grew together in impossible harmony. Flowers that needed the light of binary stars bloomed next to Arctic mosses that required near absolute zero temperatures. All of them thrived in the same space. "How is this possible?" asked one of the keepers, touching a crystal tree that sang softly when disturbed. "Local environmental control," Jake said as if it was the simplest thing in the world. "We adjust the physical laws in each microzone to match what each plant needs. Temperature, pressure, radiation, even the flow of time moves differently for different species." He led them to a table set with what appeared to be normal breakfast foods, but nothing was quite what it seemed. The fruit changed flavors as they ate it, cycling through tastes from dozens of worlds. The bread seemed to glow with inner warmth that spread comfort through their bodies. Even the water sparkled with energy that refreshed them more than sleep. "This is wonderful," said Zethkar, trying something that looked like eggs but tasted like sunlight. "But I must ask, what are you?" Jake set down his cup of the dark liquid he called coffee. "I told you yesterday. We're human. We evolved on Earth about 3 million years ago. We discovered fire, invented the wheel, learned to farm, built cities, developed technology. Nothing unusual about that. But this," Zethkar gestured around them. "Your ships, your abilities, the way you manipulate reality itself. This is not normal evolution, isn't it?" Jake tilted his head thoughtfully. "Tell me, Admiral, what do you think the purpose of intelligence is?" The question caught Zethkar off guard. To survive? To prosper?" "Those are good starts," Jake nodded. "But what comes after survival and prosperity?" Commander Tixall leaned forward. "Conquest, expansion, dominance over enemies. Understanding," said one of the ethereal beings. "Knowledge of the cosmos, harmony with the natural order," offered a keeper. Jake smiled at each answer. "All excellent goals. But let me show you what humans decided the purpose of intelligence was." He stood and led them to the edge of the garden. The wall dissolved at their approach, revealing space beyond, but not the empty darkness they expected. The vacuum around the ship was filled with light. Streams of energy connected distant stars. The galaxy itself seemed to pulse with life. "This is what space actually looks like," Jake explained. "What your sensors see is just the surface. Underneath, everything is connected. Every star, every planet, every living being. The universe is not separate objects floating in emptiness. It's a single, vast, living system." As they watched, some of the energy streams began to change color. Patterns flowed along them like thoughts through neural pathways. "Those are communications," Jake continued. "Messages between civilizations you've never heard of. Trade agreements between species separated by millions of light years. Love songs sent from one star system to another. The galaxy is more crowded and more connected than you ever imagined." "Why can't our sensors detect any of this?" asked Zethkar. "Because your sensors are designed to see matter and energy as separate things. You haven't learned to perceive the quantum foam that underlies reality. To you, space is mostly empty. To us, it's busier than the most crowded city." Jake waved his hand and the view changed. Now they could see their own galaxy from outside, spinning slowly in the cosmic void. But they were not alone. Dozens of other galaxies surrounded them, connected by bridges of light that pulsed with activity. "The local galactic cluster," Jake said casually. "About 40 inhabited galaxies in this neighborhood. We get together for potluck dinners every few thousand years." The delegation stared in stunned silence. Everything they thought they knew about the scale of civilization was wrong. They were not explorers mapping the final frontier. They were children taking their first steps in a neighborhood they never knew existed. "How long have humans known about all this?" asked one of the keepers. "We started suspecting something was up about 500 years ago," Jake replied. "It took us another 2 centuries to develop the right kind of sensors to see it clearly. And then we had to learn the languages." "Languages?" "Oh yes, each form of energy has its own grammar. Electromagnetic radiation speaks differently than gravitational waves. Dark matter has its own poetry. It took us a while to become fluent." He led them deeper into the ship through corridors that seemed to extend in directions their eyes could not follow. They passed workshops where humans were building devices that hurt to look at directly. Libraries where books wrote themselves as they watched. Laboratories where the laws of physics were apparently kept in jars on shelves. "Here's something that might interest you," Jake said, stopping at a room filled with floating displays. "Our intelligence department." The displays showed detailed information about every major civilization in the galaxy. Star maps more accurate than anything the Confederation possessed. Technical specifications for ships and weapons. Even personal information about political leaders. Zethkar stared at a display showing his own fleet. Every ship was there with complete technical details and crew manifests. Another screen showed the political structure of his home world, including classified information that should have been impossible for outsiders to know. "You've been spying on us," Commander Tixel said, his hand moving to his weapon. "Not spying," Jake corrected gently. "Watching. There's a difference. We don't gather information to use against people. We gather it to understand how we can help." "Help?" Jake nodded toward another set of displays. These showed various crises from Confederation history. Wars that had ended unexpectedly. Plagues that had mysteriously burned themselves out. Natural disasters that had somehow been less devastating than predicted. "The Vorthon Civil War of 2847, Jake said, pointing to one display. "Your people were about to destroy themselves with biological weapons. We introduced a small virus that neutralized the biological agents without harming anyone. The Great Plague of Kurlos Prime," he continued, indicating another screen. "We developed a cure and left it where your scientists would find it. They thought it was their own breakthrough, the asteroid that was going to destroy the Krex homeworld 3 years ago. We nudged it just slightly off course. You never even knew it was coming." The room fell silent as the delegation absorbed this information. For centuries, their civilizations had celebrated their achievements, their ability to overcome challenges and disasters. Now they learned that much of their success had been the result of invisible assistance. "Why?" asked Zethkar. "Why help us without letting us know?" Jake's expression became serious. "Because civilizations need to grow on their own. If we solved all your problems for you, you'd never develop the strength and wisdom you'll need for what's coming." "What's coming?" Instead of answering directly, Jake led them to what he called the Planning Center. It was a vast space filled with displays showing the entire universe. Not just their galaxy, but all galaxies, stretching to the edge of observable space. "The universe is dying," Jake said simply. "Heat death, entropy. In about 100 billion years, the last stars will burn out. The last black holes will evaporate. Everything will be cold and dark and empty." The delegation stared at the displays showing the slow death of everything they knew. "But that's not for billions of years," one of the keepers said weakly. "Which is why we need to start preparing now," Jake replied. "The project we're working on won't be finished for quite some time. We need every intelligent species in the universe to reach their full potential if we're going to succeed." "What project?" Jake smiled and waved his hand. The displays changed, showing something that made their minds reel. Massive constructions that spanned entire galaxies. Machines that could manipulate the fundamental forces of reality. Technology that could reach beyond the boundaries of space and time itself. "We're going to build a new universe," he said matter-of-factly. "One that doesn't suffer from entropy. One where intelligent life can flourish forever. But we can't do it alone. We need the creativity and perspective of every species that ever lived." Commander Tixall laughed, but it was not a sound of amusement. "You're insane. What you're describing is impossible." "So was faster-than-light travel until your people figured it out," Jake replied calmly. "So was terraforming planets until the gardener species learned how. So was telepathy until the ethereal beings evolved the ability. Every impossible thing becomes possible when someone refuses to give up." He led them to a final room, one that took their breath away. It was filled with humans, but not just humans. Beings they recognized from the Confederation worlds worked alongside species they had never seen. All of them were focused on displays and controls that seemed to bend reality around them. The project requires different ways of thinking, Jake explained. Human creativity, Vorthon logic, Krex determination, ethereal intuition, keeper wisdom. Every species brings something unique to the table. In the center of the room stood a human woman who seemed to be in charge. She looked young, but her eyes held depths that spoke of incredible age and experience. When she turned to greet them, space itself seemed to bend around her. "Welcome," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated in dimensions they could not perceive. "I'm Captain Sarah Chen, project coordinator for this sector. Jake's told me so much about you." Her handshake was like touching the surface of a star. Power flowed through her that could have reshaped worlds with a thought. Yet she smiled warmly and spoke as if they were old friends. "I know this must be overwhelming," she said. "Learning that everything you thought you knew about the universe is just the beginning. But trust me, once you understand the full scope of what we're trying to accomplish, you'll see why it's all necessary." She led them to a central display that showed their galaxy in incredible detail. Every star system was marked with symbols indicating the level of civilization present. Most were green, showing healthy development. Some were yellow, indicating species that needed guidance. A few were red, marking civilizations in crisis. "This is our responsibility," Sarah said. "Every thinking being in the galaxy. We watch over them, help them when they need it, guide them toward their potential. It's not about controlling them. It's about making sure they have the chance to contribute to something greater than themselves." "And if they refuse?" asked Commander Tixal. "Then they refuse," Sarah replied with a shrug. "We don't force anyone to participate, but most species, once they understand what we're offering, choose to help. The chance to ensure that intelligence survives the death of the universe tends to be pretty motivating." She touched a control and the display zoomed in on the Confederation worlds. "Your civilizations are almost ready for the next step. You've achieved stable interstellar government, peaceful coexistence between species, and basic mastery over matter and energy. Soon we'll be able to offer you junior partnership in the project." "What would that involve?" asked Zethkar. "Learning," Sarah said simply. "We'd share some of our knowledge with you. Not everything at once, of course. That would be overwhelming and potentially dangerous, but enough to let you start contributing to the real work. And in return, you help us save the universe. You bring your unique perspectives and abilities to bear on the greatest challenge any form of life has ever faced. You become part of something that will outlast the stars themselves." The offer hung in the air between them like a physical presence. Everything they had worked for, every achievement of their civilization suddenly seemed small compared to what was being offered. "We need to think about this," Zethkar said finally. "Of course," Sarah nodded. "Take all the time you need. This isn't a decision to make lightly." She gestured and Jake stepped forward. "I'll take you back to your quarters. Rest, discuss it among yourselves. When you're ready, we'll be here." As they walked back through the impossible corridors of the human ship, Zethkar's mind raced with possibilities. Everything he thought he knew about the galaxy had been wrong. The humans were not newcomers to be cataloged and studied. They were the gardeners of civilization itself, quietly nurturing every species toward their full potential. And now they were offering his people a chance to join the greatest project in the history of the universe. The question was, were the Confederation species ready for that responsibility? Behind them, the human ship continued its journey through space that was not empty at all, but filled with wonders beyond imagination. The galaxy was vast and ancient and alive with intelligence, and somewhere in its spiral arms, civilizations that thought they were alone continued their daily lives, unaware that they were part of a plan that would outlast eternity itself. The atlas of known space had ended the moment they crossed into human territory. But the atlas of possibility had only just begun. News traveled fast in the Galactic Confederation. Within days of Admiral Zethkar's first transmission back to headquarters, every major civilization knew about the humans. The reaction was exactly what Sarah Chen had expected it would be. Panic. On Vorthak Prime, the ruling council met in emergency session for the first time in 300 years. Their most advanced computers had spent decades calculating the precise location of every significant civilization in the galaxy. The discovery that an entire species had existed undetected for millennia made their scientists question everything they thought they understood about physics. "It's impossible," declared Science Minister Colthran, his blue scales flickering with agitation. "Our sensors can detect a single ship across 100 light-years. How could an entire civilization remain hidden?" High Admiral Vextar leaned forward in his chair. "The real question is not how they hid from us, but why. What purpose does such deception serve?" In the warrior halls of the Krex hegemony, the response was more direct. War Chief Graktor slammed his massive fist on the battle table, cracking the reinforced metal surface. "No species can be allowed to possess such overwhelming superiority," he growled to his generals. "We must strike before they decide we are a threat." His intelligence chief, a smaller but cleverer Krex named Siktal, shook his head. "War Chief, the reports from Commander Tixal are clear. A single human ship disabled our entire exploration fleet without firing a shot. They carried our ships like toys. What do you think their military could do to us?" "Then we build bigger weapons," Graktor snarled. "We ally with every species in the galaxy if necessary. Numbers can overcome technology." Meanwhile, in the crystal spires of the ethereal collective, the reaction was quite different, but equally disturbed. The beings of pure thought had always believed themselves to be the most evolved species in the galaxy. Their ability to touch any mind, to read thoughts across star systems, had made them confident in their superiority. Now they learned that human minds existed beyond their reach entirely. Mistral, the eldest of the Ethereal Council, flickered with confusion. When Cirith attempted to probe the human Jake Morrison, the contact nearly destroyed her consciousness. She described it as trying to embrace a supernova with her bare essence. "What manner of beings think in patterns we cannot comprehend?" wondered Flowing, another council member. "Are they truly biological or something else wearing biological form?" The keepers of the First Light, ancient beyond measure, searched their vast archives with growing desperation. Surely somewhere in their millions of years of recorded history, there was mention of these humans. Elder Timoth floated before the great archive, tendrils of energy flowing from his crystalline body into the storage matrix that held the memories of eons. "Search again," he commanded the archive systems. "Any reference to beings who manipulate matter and energy with thought alone. Any records of species that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Any mention of the word human or the planet Earth." The archives hummed with activity. Petabytes of information flowed past in seconds. Finally, a response came. 17 references found. Category: natural phenomena. Subcategory: unexplained. Timoth's form brightened with hope, then dimmed as he reviewed the results. Stellar anomalies that had seemed random. Gravitational effects that violated known physics. Energy patterns that appeared to show intelligence but were dismissed as cosmic coincidence. "By the First Light," he whispered. "They've been active in our space for millions of years. We classified their works as natural phenomena because we couldn't conceive of any species capable of such feats, but nowhere was the reaction more intense than among the common citizens of the Confederation worlds. Within hours of the news breaking, the galactic communication networks were flooded with speculation, fear, and wild theories. Some claimed the humans were ancient gods returning to claim their creation. Others insisted they were invaders from another dimension, preparing to enslave or destroy all other life. A few suggested they were actually future versions of existing species, returned from the end of time. Xenobiologist Talea of the University of Vorthak had a different theory, one she shared with anyone willing to listen. "Look at the pattern," she insisted to her colleagues. "Humans claim to have been watching us for 12,000 years. They've intervened in our crises without revealing themselves. They've guided our development while letting us believe we achieved everything on our own. This is not the behavior of conquerors or gods. This is the behavior of parents." Her colleague, Professor Nixar, rejected the idea immediately. "Parents? Talea, humans claim to have evolved on a single world just 3 million years ago. Most of our civilizations are older than that." "Are they?" she challenged. "Or is that simply what we've been led to believe? What if the development of intelligence in this galaxy was not natural? What if it was seeded, guided, nurtured by a species that achieved transcendence long before any of us took our first steps?" The debate raged across every academic institution in Confederation space. But the arguments were about to become irrelevant. 3 weeks after first contact, The humans made their second move. It started on the trading world of Nexus Station, the largest commercial hub in Confederation space. Merchants from dozens of species gathered there daily to exchange goods, information, and currency. The station itself was a marvel of engineering, capable of supporting millions of beings in perfect environmental harmony. That morning, Station Manager Kelnira was reviewing the daily arrival schedules when something impossible appeared on her screens. A single small vessel requesting docking permission. The ship's registry showed it was of human origin. "This can't be right," she muttered, checking her instruments. According to every report from the Rim expeditions, humans use ships the size of cities. This vessel was barely larger than a personal transport. She granted docking permission and watched as the ship settled into Bay 47 with impossible grace. No maneuvering thrusters, no gravitational anchors. It simply flowed through space like a living thing and came to rest without disturbing so much as a dust particle on the docking platform. The being who emerged from the ship looked surprisingly normal. Male, middle-aged by human standards, wearing simple clothing that could have come from any of a dozen different cultures. He carried a small bag and walked with the casual confidence of someone who had made this journey 1,000 times before. His name, according to the docking manifest, was Marcus Thompson. Occupation: trader. Purpose of visit: commerce. Within an hour of his arrival, Marcus had set up a small booth in the station's main marketplace. His goods were simple objects that looked like they could have been made anywhere in the galaxy. Small devices, tools, trinkets, and curiosities, but nothing was as simple as it appeared. Dr. Ixinara, a Vorthan scientist visiting the station, was the first to examine one of Marcus's products. It was a small cube no larger than a child's toy, made of what appeared to be ordinary metal. "What does it do?" she asked. Marcus smiled. "It's an element synthesizer. Feed it any form of matter, and it can rearrange the atomic structure to create any element you need." Ixinara stared at the device. "That's impossible. The energy requirements alone would be enormous. You'd need a fusion reactor just to power the process." "Well," Marcus said thoughtfully, "it does draw about 12 watts from ambient cosmic radiation. I hope that's not a problem." 12 watts. The energy consumption of a small light bulb. To perform atomic manipulation that should have required the power output of a small star. "May I examine it more closely?" Ixinara asked. "Of course. My daughter Sarah built it for her school science project. She got an A+. The scientist took the device to her laboratory aboard the station. Her instruments confirmed what Marcus had claimed. The cube could indeed transmute any element into any other element, powered by nothing more than background radiation. But that was not the most disturbing discovery. When she opened the device to examine its internal structure, she found components that should not have been able to exist. Crystals that bent space around themselves, circuits that operated in dimensions her instruments couldn't measure, materials that were simultaneously solid and liquid and gas depending on how she observed them. "This is beyond our best theoretical physics," she reported to her colleagues. "The technology gap is not measured in years or centuries. It's measured in fundamental understanding of how reality operates." Word of the human trader spread quickly through the station. Other scientists, engineers, and curious citizens flocked to examine Marcus's wares. Each item was more impossible than the last. A communication device that could send messages instantaneously across any distance. A medical scanner that could diagnose and cure diseases that hadn't even been discovered yet. A tool that could repair any broken object by simply reversing its entropy. "How much for the medical scanner?" asked Dr. Felnox, the station's chief physician. "Oh, I can't sell that one," Marcus replied apologetically. "Galactic health regulations, you understand. But I can show you how to build one if you're interested." He pulled out what looked like a standard data pad and began sketching diagrams. The designs he showed were elegant in their simplicity, using principles that every engineer in the galaxy understood. But the applications were revolutionary. "You're giving this away?" Felnox asked in amazement. "Knowledge wants to be free," Marcus shrugged. "Besides, my people believe that everyone deserves access to good health care." By the end of the day, Marcus had given away more technological advances than the Confederation had achieved in the past century. And he acted as if it was nothing more than casual conversation. "I don't understand," said Station Manager Kelnira when she finally worked up the courage to approach the human. "Your technology is beyond anything we possess. You could demand any price, control entire sectors of the economy. Why give it away? Marcus looked genuinely puzzled by the question. Why would I want to control anything? I'm just here to help out some neighbors. But the power, lady, Marcus said gently. When you can turn cosmic radiation into any element you need, when you can travel anywhere in the galaxy in minutes, when you can heal any injury or cure any disease, what use is economic power? We have everything we need. We give away knowledge because sharing makes everyone stronger. That evening, as Marcus prepared to leave the station, he was approached by a delegation of the most powerful beings on Nexus. Trade barons, political leaders, and criminal bosses, all united in their desire to make deals with this impossible human. Name your price, said Vextalk the broker, whose trade empire spanned 40 systems. Whatever you want, we can make you the richest being in the galaxy. Marcus smiled politely. I appreciate the offer, but I already have everything I need. My ship grows its own food, manufactures anything I want, and repairs itself when damaged. What would I do with wealth? Crime Lord Scalrath stepped forward, his massive form intimidating even by Krek standards. Then perhaps you understand the value of power. Join with us. Help us expand our territories. We can offer you influence over entire worlds. I already have influence over entire worlds, Marcus replied matter-of-factly.
Humanity monitors and protects about 12 billion inhabited systems.
We don't need more territory. We need friends. The delegation exchanged glances. 12 billion inhabited systems. The number was staggering beyond comprehension. What do you want from us? Asked Counselor Trendar, speaking for the station's government. Just to be good neighbors, Marcus said. Trade a little, share some ideas, maybe grab a drink and tell stories about the old days. The galaxy's a big place, but it's always nice to have friends nearby. As his ship departed Nexus Station, Marcus left behind a marketplace in chaos. Every major government in the Confederation was demanding copies of the technological data he had shared. Scientists were arguing over theories that challenged everything they thought they understood about physics. Engineers were struggling to build devices that seemed to violate the laws of nature. But most importantly, word was spreading throughout the galaxy about the human trader who gave away miracles like party favors and asked for nothing in return. The reaction in the Confederation capitals was swift and predictable. The Vorthon Council demanded immediate restrictions on human access to Confederation space. The Krek's hegemony began mobilizing their fleets for what they saw as an inevitable conflict. The ethereal collective retreated deeper into their crystal spires, fearing contact with minds they could not comprehend. Only the ancient keepers seemed to understand what was really happening. They are testing us, Elder Timoth announced to his colleagues. Not our military strength or our technological abilities. They are testing our character. How do we react when faced with beings far superior to ourselves? Do we respond with fear and aggression or with wisdom and humility? His words were prophetic, because 3 days later the Krek's hegemony launched what they called a preemptive strike against human space. 10,000 warships, the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history, crossed into the sectors where the humans were known to live. What happened next would become legend. The battle lasted exactly 7 minutes, but calling it a battle was generous. It was more like a cosmic practical joke played by beings with the power of gods and the sense of humor of children. When the smoke cleared and the Krek's fleet found themselves gently deposited back at their home system, covered in flower petals and holding baskets of homemade cookies, the galaxy finally understood what they were dealing with. The humans were not conquerors or destroyers. They were teachers, guardians, and cosmic neighbors with a very strange sense of humor, and they had been watching over the galaxy's development for far longer than anyone had imagined. War Chief Graktor stood on the bridge of the Bloodfang, his massive form trembling with rage and humiliation. Around him, his generals and admirals tried not to meet his burning yellow eyes. The taste of defeat was bitter in his mouth, made worse by the fact that he could not even understand how they had been defeated. Explain to me again, he growled, his voice like grinding stone, how 10,000 of our finest warships were disabled by a single enemy vessel. General Tharok shifted uncomfortably. War Chief, the reports are difficult to believe. Our fleet entered human space in perfect battle formation. We detected a single small craft approaching. When it hailed us, a human female identified herself as Lieutenant Commander Jessica Park, on routine patrol duty. And then, she asked us to turn around. Commander Veltar responded with our standard demands for surrender. The humans seemed disappointed. She said something about not wanting to do paperwork. Grachter's massive hands clenched into fists. Continue. What happened next defies all understanding of physics and warfare, Tharok continued reluctantly. The human's ship changed. It expanded, flowed, became something our sensors could not properly track. And then what? Grachtor roared. All our weapons turned into flowers, War Chief. 10,000 ships armed with plasma cannons, photon torpedoes, and fusion bombs. Everything became flowers. Our hulls became transparent. We could see through our own ships like they were made of glass. The other generals nodded, their expressions mixing shame with bewilderment. It was the most complete military defeat in Krek's history, accomplished without a single casualty on either side. She towed us home, added Admiral Korith quietly. All 10,000 ships. Carried us through space like we were children's toys. When we arrived at Krek's Prime, she left us with baskets of baked goods and a note thanking us for visiting. The war room fell silent except for the sound of Grachtor's labored breathing. Everything the Kreks believed about strength and power had been shattered in 7 minutes by a single human who treated their mightiest fleet like a minor inconvenience. What do our scientists say about how she did it? Grachtor asked. Science advisor Nixtal stepped forward nervously. War Chief, our best theory is that she temporarily altered the fundamental laws of physics in the local space-time region. She changed the basic properties of matter and energy to make our weapons harmless and our hulls transparent. That's impossible. Yes, War Chief, it is completely impossible. But we have sensor data from 6,000 different instruments all confirming the same thing. For 7 minutes, the universe operated according to different rules. Grachtor turned to stare out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the humans continued their daily lives, probably already forgetting about the Kreks fleet they had effortlessly defeated. The thought was almost unbearable. What is the status of our other fleets? He asked. All ships have been recalled to defensive positions around our core worlds, reported Admiral Korith. But War Chief, if the humans can do to entire fleets what Park did to ours, then our military might is meaningless, Grachtor finished. 10,000 years of warrior tradition, reduced to nothing by beings who fight with flowers and cookies. Meanwhile, news of what the galaxy was calling the day the universe blinked spread to every inhabited world in the Confederation. The reaction was everything Captain Sarah Chen had expected and more. On Vorthak Prime, the ruling council sat in emergency session for the 3rd time in a month. Science Minister Kolthron's scales had lost their blue luster, fading to a sickly gray color that indicated deep stress. The implications are staggering, he reported to the council. If humans can rewrite the laws of physics at will, then everything we understand about reality is wrong. Our entire technological civilization is built on principles they can apparently change whenever they wish. High Admiral Vexitar leaned forward. Are you saying they could make all our technology stop working? I'm saying they could make water flow uphill, fire burn cold, and gravity push instead of pull. If they can alter fundamental physical laws, there are no limits to what they might do. The council chamber erupted in frightened discussion. Representatives from dozens of worlds spoke at once, their voices mixing into a chaos of fear and confusion. Order, called Council Leader Morthak, her voice amplified by the chamber's systems. We must respond to this situation rationally. Have we received any communication from the humans since the incident? Yes, replied Communications Director Feltar. A brief message from Captain Sarah Chen. She apologizes for any inconvenience caused by the demonstration and invites us to continue the diplomatic discussions whenever we feel ready. Apologizes? Admiral Vexitar sputtered. They humiliate the galaxy's strongest military force and then apologize for the inconvenience? In the crystal spires of the ethereal collective, the reaction was more philosophical but equally disturbed. The beings of pure thought had always believed that consciousness was the highest form of existence. Physical matter was crude and limiting, but humans seemed to treat physical reality as if it was made of thoughts they could reshape at will. Elder Mistral flickered with confusion as she addressed her council. We must reconsider our fundamental understanding of the relationship between mind and matter. These humans appear to have achieved something we thought impossible, perfect unity between consciousness and physical reality. Perhaps, suggested Council Member Flowing, they are not truly biological beings at all. Perhaps they are thoughts that have learned to wear flesh as a convenience. Or perhaps, said another voice, we have been thinking too small. The council turned to see Siereth, the ethereal who had attempted to probe Jake Morrison's mind. She had been in meditation since the incident, trying to make sense of what she had experienced. Explain, Elder Mistral requested. When I touched the human's consciousness, Siereth began, I experienced something beyond our understanding. His mind existed not just in this dimension, but in several simultaneously. He was thinking thoughts that spanned multiple realities at once. The council members flickered with interest and alarm. What you're describing sounds like the theoretical concept of multidimensional consciousness, said Flowing. But such a thing would require mental capabilities far beyond even our most advanced individuals. Yes, Sirith agreed. And that's not all. While I was in contact with his mind, I caught glimpses of something vast, a network connecting billions of human minds across space and time. They don't just think individually, they think collectively, sharing consciousness across their entire species. The implication sent ripples of shock through the assembled beings. A species-wide collective consciousness would represent an evolutionary leap beyond anything they had imagined possible. But it was among the ancient keepers that the most significant realization occurred. Elder Timoth floated in the deepest vault of the Great Archive, surrounded by memory crystals that held the accumulated knowledge of millions of years. For days he had been searching for any reference to the techniques the humans had demonstrated. Finally he found what he was looking for. By the first light, he whispered as the data flowed into his consciousness. They're not just advanced. They're our successors. He called an emergency gathering of all Elder Keepers, sharing his discovery with minds that had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. Look at the pattern, he urged them, projecting the data into their shared consciousness. Every few million years, a species appears that transcends normal evolutionary development. The progenitors who built the first stellar engineering projects, the architects who carved the great trade routes through subspace, the gardeners who seeded life on barren worlds. The other elders absorbed the information, their crystalline forms glowing brighter as understanding dawned. Each transcendent species guided younger civilizations for a time, then moved beyond our ability to perceive them. Timoth continued. We thought they had died out or left the galaxy. But what if they simply evolved beyond our ability to detect them? Elder Krelnath pulsed with realization. You're suggesting that all these transcendent species still exist, but at levels of existence we can't perceive. And that humans are the newest addition to their ranks, Timoth confirmed. The latest species to achieve true transcendence. That's why they can manipulate physical laws like thoughts, why they exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, why they've been watching over us without us knowing. The gathering fell into contemplative silence as the implications settled. If Timoth was correct, then humans represented the newest level in an evolutionary hierarchy that stretched back millions of years. If this is true, Elder Vorash said finally, then our civilizations are not the pinnacle of galactic development. We're students in a school we didn't know we were attending. And our teachers have just revealed themselves, added Elder Nexthol. The question is, are we ready for the lesson? The answer to that question came sooner than expected. 3 days after the Krex incident, every major government in the Confederation received identical messages from Captain Sarah Chen. The communications were simple, direct, and impossible to ignore. To the leaders and peoples of the Galactic Confederation, the message began, We hope this finds you well. Recent events have caused some concern about human intentions and capabilities. We would like to address these concerns directly. Humanity poses no threat to any peaceful civilization. We have no interest in conquest, domination, or interference with your internal affairs. We have been observing your development with great pride and affection. You are our neighbors, and we want nothing more than to see you prosper and grow. However, we understand that our recent demonstrations may have been unsettling. To address your concerns and answer your questions, we would like to invite representatives from all Confederation worlds to visit us, not as prisoners or subjects, but as honored guests. We will be hosting what you might call an open house, a chance for you to see who we really are, what we really do, and why we do it. You can bring as many representatives as you like, ask any questions you wish, and leave whenever you choose. The invitation is extended to all species, all governments, all organizations, and all individuals. Come alone or come in groups. Come as diplomats or come as tourists. Come suspicious or come curious. All are welcome. We look forward to meeting you properly. With friendship and respect, Captain Sarah Chen and the people of Earth. The invitation was followed by detailed coordinates and safe passage guarantees. Within hours, every government in the Confederation was debating whether to accept. The Vorthon Council voted to send a massive diplomatic mission, including their best scientists and military advisors. The Kreks, humiliated but not defeated, decided to send observers to learn about their new neighbors. The Ethereal Collective chose their most gifted seers to attempt understanding the human consciousness. Even the ancient keepers stirred from their meditations to witness what might be the next step in galactic evolution. But it wasn't just governments that responded to the invitation. Across the Confederation, ordinary citizens began organizing their own expeditions. Scientists, artists, philosophers, merchants, students, and adventurers all wanted to see the humans for themselves. The greatest migration in galactic history began as millions of beings from thousands of worlds set course for the coordinates Sarah Chen had provided. They came in ships of every design, from massive government vessels to tiny personal craft. What they found waiting for them was beyond anything they could have imagined. The coordinates led to a region of space that had appeared empty on every Confederation star chart. But as the arriving ships dropped out of hyperspace, they found themselves surrounded by wonders that challenged their understanding of what was possible. Floating cities larger than moons drifted through the void like living things. Rings of energy encircled stars, capturing their output for purposes the visitors could not guess. Streams of light connected distant worlds, carrying traffic that moved faster than the speed of light itself. And everywhere there were humans. But not just humans. Beings of every description worked alongside them. Species the visitors recognized and thousands they had never seen before. The region wasn't just inhabited by humans. It was a thriving community of intelligence that spanned the galaxy and beyond. Captain Sarah Chen's ship, now revealed to be just one of millions in the area, approached the largest gathering of Confederation vessels. Her voice came over their communication systems, warm with genuine welcome. "Hello, neighbors," she said. "Welcome to the real galaxy. We're so glad you could make it. Let us show you around." As the tour began, the visitors realized they were not just seeing advanced technology or witnessing impressive capabilities. They were getting their first glimpse of what their own civilizations might become, given enough time and wisdom. The galaxy was vast and ancient and full of wonders they had never imagined. And humanity, the newest addition to the community of transcendent beings, was ready to help them take their next steps toward a future beyond their wildest dreams. 6 months had passed since the Great Gathering, as historians were already calling it. Admiral Zethkar stood once again on the bridge of the eternal glory, but everything had changed. The ship that had once represented the peak of Confederation technology now seemed like a child's toy compared to what he had seen in human space. The bridge was quiet as his crew worked at their stations. But the quiet was different now. It was not the silence of routine operation. It was the silence of beings who had looked into the infinite and were still trying to understand what they had seen. "Sir," called his communications officer, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Confederation Council. They're requesting your final report." Zethkar nodded slowly. For weeks he had struggled to find words that could describe what they had discovered. How could he explain to leaders who thought in terms of territory and resources that they had encountered? Beings who treated reality itself as a canvas for their creativity. "Open the channel," he ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing the faces of the Confederation's most powerful leaders. Fourth-hand council members with their shifting blue scales. Kreks generals still bearing the shame of their defeat. Ethereal beings whose forms wavered with uncertainty. Ancient keepers whose crystal bodies pulsed with deep thought. "Admiral Zethkar," spoke Council Leader Morthak, "we are ready to receive your complete assessment of the human situation." Zethkar looked around his bridge one more time, then faced the screen. "Honored leaders, fellow beings of the Confederation, what I am about to tell you will challenge everything we thought we knew about our place in the galaxy." He paused, organizing thoughts that still seemed too large for any language to contain. Humanity is not simply another advanced civilization. They are not conquerors, merchants, or explorers in any sense we understand those terms. They are gardeners of intelligence itself, shepherds of consciousness on a scale that spans the entire galaxy. The faces on the screen showed confusion and skepticism. War Chief Graktor leaned forward, his scarred features twisted with disbelief. "Admiral, you are speaking in riddles. Give us facts, numbers, military capabilities. Military capabilities? Zethkar almost smiled. War Chief, asking about human military capabilities is like asking about the military capabilities of a star. They don't fight wars in any sense we understand. They reshape reality to make conflict impossible. He gestured to his sensor officer, who activated the main display. Images flowed across the screen. The floating cities they had visited, the rings of light that surrounded entire star systems, the streams of energy that connected distant galaxies. During our visit, Captain Sarah Chen showed us the true scope of their operations. Humanity doesn't just inhabit a few worlds at the galaxy's rim. They maintain active presence in over 12 billion star systems. They monitor, protect, and guide the development of every intelligent species in the galaxy. Science Minister Colthran's scales flickered rapidly with agitation. That's impossible. Our sensors would have detected such widespread activity. Would they? Zethkar challenged. Our sensors are designed to detect matter and energy as we understand them. Humans operate on principles that make our physics look like children's games. They exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Their consciousness spans space and time in ways we can barely comprehend. He changed the display to show recordings from their tour of the human facilities. Beings of every description worked together on projects that defied understanding. Species they had never seen before collaborated with humans on devices that manipulated the fundamental forces of the universe. This is not just human space, Zethkar continued. This is a community of transcended species, beings who have evolved beyond the need for territory, resources, or traditional power. Humanity is simply the newest member of a group that has been guiding galactic development for millions of years. Elder Timoth of the Keepers pulsed with understanding. The progenitors, the architects, the legends we thought were myths. All real, Zethkar confirmed. All still active but evolved beyond our ability to perceive them under normal circumstances. And all working together on a project so vast that it makes our greatest achievements seem like first steps. The screen shifted again, showing images that made the assembled leaders gasp. Massive construction projects that spanned entire solar systems, devices that could manipulate space and time themselves, technology that operated on principles beyond their comprehension. They are preparing for the end of the universe itself, Zethkar said quietly. When the last stars burn out and the final black holes evaporate, when entropy claims everything we know and love, they will be ready. They are building the infrastructure for a new universe, one that will not suffer from the flaws of this one. The conference chamber fell silent. Leaders who commanded the resources of entire star systems sat speechless before the scope of what they were hearing. Finally, Council Leader Morthak found her voice. What do they want from us? To join them, Zethkar replied. Not as subjects or servants, but as partners in the greatest endeavor any form of intelligence has ever attempted. They want to share their knowledge, help us evolve beyond our current limitations, and welcome us into a community that spans not just this galaxy, but all galaxies. War Chief Graktor slammed his fist on his table, the sound carrying across the communication link. It's a trap. No species offers such power without expecting something in return. And what would they gain by conquering us? Zethkar asked. War Chief, they can turn our weapons into flowers with a thought. They can move our fleets like toys. They can rewrite the laws of physics at will. What could they possibly need from us that they cannot simply take? Then why the charade? Why reveal themselves now? Zethkar smiled, remembering his conversations with Captain Chen. Because, War Chief, the project requires different ways of thinking. Forth in logic, Krek's determination, ethereal intuition, keeper wisdom. Every species brings unique perspectives that cannot be replicated or conquered. They need us not for our resources or our submission, but for our minds. The display changed one final time, showing a recording of Captain Sarah Chen addressing the assembled Confederation representatives during the Great Gathering. Her words had been broadcast to every world in the galaxy, but their impact was still being felt. My friends, her recorded voice said, you are not primitive beings who have stumbled into the presence of gods. You are our neighbors, our colleagues, and our hope for the future. Every species in this galaxy has something unique to contribute to the great work ahead. The recording showed the vast audience of beings from hundreds of worlds, all listening intently to her words. The universe is ending, Chen continued. But that doesn't mean intelligence must end with it. Together we can build something that will outlast the stars themselves, a new cosmos where consciousness can flourish forever, where every dream and hope and story can survive the heat death of reality. She gestured, and the space around the gathering became transparent, showing the cosmic web that connected all galaxies. Streams of light pulsed between distant stellar clusters, carrying information and consciousness across unimaginable distances. "This is not just our project anymore," Chen said. "It belongs to every thinking being in existence. The question is not whether you are worthy to join us. The question is whether we are worthy of your trust." The recording ended, leaving the Confederation leaders in contemplative silence. Finally, Elder Timoth spoke for all of them. "Admiral, what is your recommendation?" Zethkar looked at each face on the screen, these beings who had shaped the destiny of their civilizations for centuries. "Honored leaders, I have spent my life creating maps of the galaxy. I thought I was charting the boundaries of known space, marking the limits of exploration and discovery." He gestured toward the window, where the stars shone with their eternal light. "I was wrong. The galactic atlas doesn't end at the rim. It transforms. What we called empty space is actually the beginning of something far greater than we ever imagined. The humans haven't just invited us to join their community. They've invited us to help write the next chapter in the story of intelligence itself." The vote, when it came, was unanimous. Every major civilization in the Confederation agreed to accept the human offer of partnership. Not because they had no choice, but because the alternative, remaining forever small in a universe that was vast beyond imagination, was unacceptable. Over the following months, the transformation began. Human teachers arrived on Confederation worlds, sharing knowledge that revolutionized their understanding of science, philosophy, and consciousness itself. Confederation students traveled to human facilities, learning to think in dimensions they had never known existed. The changes were not just technological. As species began to understand their true place in the cosmic community, old conflicts seemed petty and meaningless. The Kreks redirected their warrior culture toward protecting developing civilizations. The Vorthons applied their logical minds to solving problems that had puzzled the galaxy for millennia. The ethereal beings learned to touch the multidimensional consciousness that connected all thinking beings. But perhaps the most profound change was in perspective itself. Admiral Zethkar stood once more on the bridge of the eternal glory. But the ship was no longer the same vessel that had set out to map the galaxy's final frontier. Human technology had transformed it into something that could travel between dimensions, exist in multiple realities simultaneously, and perceive the underlying structure that connected all things. His crew worked at stations that responded to thought rather than touch. Their instruments could detect the quantum foam that underlay reality, the conscious networks that spanned galactic superclusters, and the great constructions that prepared for the birth of new universes. "Sir," called his communications officer, "we're receiving a message from Captain Chen. The next phase of the project is ready to begin." Zethkar nodded. The next phase would involve contact with civilizations in other galaxies, beings so advanced that even the humans considered them mysterious. Species that had transcended not just physical limitations, but the boundaries between existence and non-existence. "Set course for the coordinates she provided," he ordered. As the eternal glory began its journey toward encounters that would make their first contact with humans seem simple by comparison, Zethkar reflected on how much had changed. The galaxy he had thought he was mapping had turned out to be just one small room in a cosmic mansion that extended into infinite dimensions. The Confederation worlds were no longer isolated civilizations competing for resources and territory. They were students in a university that spanned all of reality, learning from teachers who had forgotten more about the universe than most species would ever know. And somewhere in the vast network of consciousness that connected every thinking being in existence, new thoughts were being born, ideas that would survive the death of stars, dreams that would outlast the end of time itself, stories that would be told in universes yet to be created. The Galactic Atlas had indeed ended where human space began, but what had begun in its place was infinitely more magnificent. It was the Atlas of possibility itself, charted not in terms of distance and territory, but in terms of consciousness and potential. Admiral Zethkar smiled as the stars shifted around his transformed ship, carrying him toward adventures that would have been inconceivable just months before. The universe was vast and strange and full of wonders beyond imagination, and for the first time in his life he truly understood that the most important journeys were not measured in light years traveled, but in the expansion of the mind itself. Behind them, the galaxy continued its ancient rotation through space, but it was no longer the same galaxy. It had awakened to its true nature as part of something far greater, and in that awakening every star shone a little brighter. Every world pulsed with new possibilities, and every thinking being began to dream dreams larger than the cosmos itself. The legends had indeed humbled the bold, but they had done so with kindness rather than conquest. And in that humility, a new chapter in the infinite story of intelligence had begun.